Okay, good morning, everybody. Okay, so we are continuing our conversation of yichud, the prohibition for a man to be alone with a woman or vice versa, but we're all guys here, so we're talking about it from our perspective. Who is an erva to you, who's someone who is prohibited to you. So we made a distinction between yichud d'oraisa and yichud d'rabanan. If a person is in seclusion with a married woman, that's yichud d'oraisa. If a person is in seclusion with a non-Jew, that is actually only yichud d'rabanan. That is only rabbinic yichud. That's not yichud min Torah. So the Chazon Ish here on page 46 has an interesting heter. And that is that if you have an isha chashuva, if you have a woman who is, in his words, is mekureves lamalchus, is close to governmental authority, what that means is that she's someone who, if she says over what happened, people will believe her. Then she is allowed to be in yichud with a guy, because we assume nothing is going to happen to her. The guy is going to be too scared. This is a very big heter, but it would extend to a heter of cameras, because many people are very, very afraid to do things when there are cameras around. And today in many rooms, like in this room, and in almost every yeshiva that I'm aware of, and every public place, we have cameras that constantly record and monitor what's going on. The theory of the thing, people are supposed to look at them. We have some individuals here who are tasked with that situation. And certainly with yichud d'rabanan, the Chazon Ish is talking about yichud d'rabanan, because a Jewish woman and a guy is only asur yichud midrabanan, and therefore he's saying it's mutter. Now, the Aruch HaShulchan on page 47 is machmir tremendously about the following scenario. We have a heter isha shabayla be'ir. We have an overarching heter that if a woman's husband is in the same city, even if she's a married woman, there's no isur yichud to be in seclusion with her. So one could be alone in a locked room with a married woman, provided her husband is in the city. And we said there's a machlokas. Some people say it's only if the husband is likely to come home. And others say, we discussed on Wednesday, even if the husband is not likely to come home. You know he's stuck in traffic on the Belt Parkway. But if he's in the same city, there's the fear or the psychological feeling on the woman, inhibition not to do anything she shouldn't do. So we discussed that. The Aruch HaShulchan has a tremendous chumrah on that. The Aruch HaShulchan says in Siman Kaf Beis Sivav, Vim hayazeh gaspa, if there's a familiarity between the married woman and the man, let's say they grew up together, they're a cousin or something like that, or they're very close because they're in business together, then he wants to say that the fear of the husband coming back doesn't exist. That would not stop someone from doing something they shouldn't do. Okay, let's go to page 48. A very famous machlokes Gemara and Tosfos. So let's discuss it. The Gemara says on page 48, Kiddushin, a person should not be in seclusion with two women. Now we discussed that a man being alone with one woman who's asur, let's say a married woman, is isur yichud min Torah. That's asur min Torah. Tanakama over here is saying that if a man is alone even with two women in a locked room, that would be asur from yichud d'rabanan, but it's still prohibited. We obviously keep d'rabanans. One woman is allowed to be in seclusion with two men, because we say that if there are two men, if someone tries to do something inappropriate, the other man is going to tattletale. And therefore there will be a fear, an inhibition not to do something inappropriate for either man. Rabbi Shimon says even one woman could be in seclusion with, one man could be in seclusion with two women, bisman she'ishto imo, if his wife is with him.
Is she one of the two?
Now, I'm sorry, what? Just give me a second here. What? Is his wife one of the two? So according to Rabbi Shimon, the Chora, according to Rabbi Shimon, There's two ways to read this. Either Rabbi Shimon could be saying a man can only be with two women when his wife is with him. Or maybe Rabbi Shimon is saying that there's two separate heterim. A man could be with two women, and then there's a separate heter. Ishto imo, your wife is with him. And that's how Tosfos paskins. What is this heter of Ishto imo? This heter of Ishto imo is as follows. That when a person's wife is with him, there is no Isur Yichud. So in other words, even though we say that at night a man cannot be, even though we say generally a man cannot be with two women, if one's wife is one of the two women, that would be mutter. Okay? If one's wife is one of the two women, that would be mutter. This is the heter of Ishto imo. And if you learn an u avav, then you're saying it's going even on the first opinion. It's going even according to Tanakama, who says a man cannot be in seclusion with two women. Uvizman shishto imo. If his wife is one of the two women, it's mutter. Now, if you go back to page 38, I have no idea why they didn't give it as an official citation. Rav Moshe extends this heter. So again, the Hanakama, which is how we paskin, says a man cannot be in a locked room with two women. We paskin the vav, we paskin that when one's wife is one of the two women, that's mutter. Rav Moshe extends this heter. Rav Moshe says that any woman that you're allowed to be in seclusion with, if you're in seclusion with that woman and another woman, it's mutter. So what do I mean? Not only can obviously one be in miyached with one's wife, but one also is allowed to be in yichud with one's mother, one's sister, or one's daughter, right? There's no isur yichud with a mother, a sister, or a daughter, okay? Says Rav Moshe, the heter that your wife allows you to be in yichud with your wife and another woman extends to your mother or your sister. So if one is alone in a locked house with one sister and another girl, l'chora, that would be mutter according to Rav Moshe. If one is alone in a locked house with one's daughter and another woman, l'chora, that would be allowed according to Rav Moshe. It's not just the wife, it's anybody who there's no prohibition of yichud. And why is there no prohibition of yichud? Because Chazal appreciated that it's considered unhealthy and unnatural for a person to have those types of feelings to his mother, to his sister, and to his daughter. And I've said many times, the Torah and Hilchos Yichud are written for healthy people. We're not here to protect people with all sorts of illnesses of psychological natures or emotional natures. It's not shaykh, right? You need policemen. So therefore, since it's understood that a person does not have those types of feelings for his sister, it's understood also that he would be embarrassed to do something of that nature in front of his sister. And therefore, it's mutter to be in a locked room with one sister and another woman. Okay? So this is an important heter and an important thing to keep in mind. I don't know why they don't have it as one of the citations. Now on page 49, Kiddushin Pei Beis Amud Aleph, it discusses another situation, and that is Kol she'iska v'im hanoshim. If someone is in business with women, lo yisached im hanoshim, he cannot be alone with women. If someone's business is with women, so he's too familiar, 1 second, to being around women, so then the implication is he can't be alone with women, even if there are more than two women. Normally a man can be in seclusion with two women, but let's say it's a person who sells shaitels. So the only customers that buy shaitels that I'm aware of, b'derech klal, in our society are women. You never know anymore. But anyways, okay, women are the only customers that buy shaitels. So all day, is that what you were going to ask me? What were you going to ask me? I answered the question? Gewaldig. So therefore, if a person is in a sheitel machering business, then they're too familiar to be around women. They can't be alone, even with three women, even more than two women. Okay? Yeah. And the case that the Chazal bring in those days, it's just interesting thing, was a perfume merchant. In those days, you didn't have perfume stores. You would have a fellow who would carry, it discusses in the Mishnah and Torah how this would work. He would carry a special box with different compartments, and all the beautiful different perfumes were in different boxes, and he would go from city to city, meet up with the women would smell whichever perfume they want, and Gavaldik would be amazing. So now, this person is around women the whole day. That's what his business is. So that type of situation, Shimpin Yichud, Tosfos is Machmir, even if your wife is with you, it still is not mutter if your business is with women. Obviously, parenthetically, it's always a good practice, b'chlal, if one is in that type of business, to have one's wife in the business with you. But that's another shmuz. What? Yeah, it's not allowed. But just Seichel Yashar is, my father-in-law is a pediatrician. My mother-in-law works in the pediatric office with him. It's always a good situation. Okay, let's just quickly do the halacha and then we'll stop. Page 50, Shulchan Aruch. Any woman that you're not allowed to be in seclusion with, if your wife is with you, then it's mutter peish ishto mishamarto. Now, the Shulchan Aruch does say the following thing, that if a woman is in seclusion with a guy, and the guy's wife is with him, then that does not work to matir yichud. And that is because we're afraid that sometimes, not all gayim, that certain types of cultures, they act in very inappropriate ways, even in front of their wives, and therefore it will not stop someone from doing something they're not supposed to do. Now, there's a fascinating pischei tshuva over here. And that is a fascinating discussion among the Arabs. So it's very interesting. I know we have a certain negative approach to the Arabs because of what's going on in Eretz Yisrael. It must be understood that for thousands of years, for at least 1,000 plus years, the Jewish people lived in the Middle East. It wasn't perfect. There were pogroms and things like that, but for large periods of time, things weren't as difficult as they were in Eastern Europe. I know that may be hard to imagine today, but it's true. Let me tell you, folks. And he writes, what about, could you be in yichud with an Arab man when in the Arab culture they are going to severely punish the Arab man if Khalila he's ever caught doing something with the woman? And initially, he's talking about a scenario where they would put to death an Arab man who is with a Jewish girl, even with absolute consent on both parties. Today, even in certain Arab cultures, they do things of that nature. So he writes that if that would be the scenario, where even if it was done with consent, they would put the Arab to death, then it's mutter to misyache with an Arab. Because the onesh is so chamor that they wouldn't do it. He writes that already by his time that wasn't the case, and today I don't think it's the case anymore. Unfortunately, as we've seen, they've acted like horrific situations in Eretz Yisrael on October 7th. But Lamaisa, it should be understood, a very fascinating heter, that if there's a tremendous fear of a punishment which is overarching, then there will be mutter of yichud. And I would say this l'chora could also be used additionally with cameras in certain situations. In certain situations with cameras, it's known that if something goes wrong, particularly various ages, that Khalila, the punishment would be incredibly, incredibly severe. So this could be a sniff later. I'm not being matir. Cameras is a very big discussion, but it could be a sniff later. If it's in a scenario where it's well known that if the person is caught, and it's likely to be caught because the judge is not going to care whether it was done willingly or not, then the chora, and it's known that the culture, that the punishment is severe. He actually writes they used to burn an Arab who was with a Jewish girl. He writes that. Or they used to give him lashes, even if it was done with consent. Then in such a scenario, it's another sniff lahatir because the person is not going to do it. He implies even yichud, one woman with one Arab would be mutter in such a case. Okay, we're going to stop here. I wish everybody a wonderful Shabbos Parshas Kiseitze.